The drill bit screamed against the asteroid's surface, sending vibrations up through Marcus's Hale's boots and into his bones. He'd been working the graveyard shift at the Meridian 7 mining outpost for 3 years now. Long enough that the constant hum of machinery had become a second heartbeat. The pay was decent, the work was honest, and most importantly, it kept him far from the complications of civilized space. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of mineral dust across his skin. The tunnel stretched before him, carved from centuries of automated extraction. His helmet light cut through the darkness, revealing the glittering veins of rare minerals that made this operation profitable. He was supposed to be checking the structural integrity of Section 12, a routine task that usually took 2 hours. What he found instead would change everything. The sound reached him first, a soft whimpering that didn't belong in the mechanical symphony of the mine. Marcus froze, his hand instinctively moving to the emergency cum on his belt. Protocol said report anything unusual immediately, but something in that sound, so small and frightened, made him hesitate. He moved deeper into the unauthorized section, his boots crunching on loose rock. The whimpering grew louder, and then he saw her. Huddled behind a support beam was a child, no more than 7 or 8 by human standards. But she wasn't human. Her skin held an iridescent quality, shifting between blue and violet in his helmet light. Delicate patterns covered her arms like living tattoos, and her eyes, those impossibly large eyes, were filled with terror. Marcus slowly knelt, keeping his movements gentle. He'd never seen a Kalahari before, but he recognized the species from the news feeds. They were a reclusive people, rarely venturing into human territory. What was a child doing alone in a mining outpost thousands of miles from any diplomatic zone? The girl pressed herself harder against the wall, her small body trembling. Marcus raised his hands slowly, palms open. He didn't speak, didn't try to approach. He simply waited, letting her see that he meant no harm. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the distant rumble of the drills. Then the alarms began to wail. Red emergency lights flooded the tunnel, and Marcus heard the heavy footsteps of security forces approaching. The child's eyes went wide with panic, and she tried to scramble deeper into the shadows. Marcus made a decision that defied every logical thought in his head. He moved between the child and the tunnel entrance, spreading his arms wide. When Overseer Dren appeared with 4 armed guards, Marcus didn't budge. Dren's face twisted with anger behind his helmet visor. The Overseer was a cruel man who saw profit in everything and compassion in nothing. His voice crackled through the cum system, harsh and demanding.
Ow. Step aside, Hale. That creature is unauthorized.
We're taking it to containment.
Marcus
shook his head. She's a child. She's terrified. You're not touching her. The Overseer's laugh was cold. You're risking your job for an alien brat? Security, remove him. The guards moved forward, their shock batons crackling with energy. Marcus stood his ground even as the first blow caught him across the shoulder, sending pain shooting down his arm. He staggered but didn't fall. The second strike hit his ribs, and he heard something crack. Still, he didn't move from his position, shielding the child. Behind him, he felt small hands clutch at his jacket. The girl was crying now, her voice speaking words he couldn't understand. But he understood her fear, and that was enough. The third blow drove him to his knees. Blood filled his mouth, and his vision blurred. The guards pushed past him, reaching for the child. With the last of his strength, Marcus grabbed the nearest guard's leg, pulling him off balance. The guard fell, cursing, and in the confusion. Marcus threw himself backward, his body covering the girl completely. The final blow came from Dren himself. A vicious kick to Marcus's head that sent the world spinning into darkness. But in that last moment of consciousness, he felt something strange. The patterns on the child's arms began to glow with brilliant light, pulsing with warmth that spread through his broken body. Her small voice whispered something that sounded like a prayer, perhaps a promise. When Marcus finally surrendered to the darkness, he didn't know that the child's glowing marks had transmitted an emergency signal across half the galaxy. He didn't know that a Kalahari warship had just entered the system moving at impossible speeds. He didn't know that his simple act of compassion had just started a chain of events that would bring two species to the brink of war, or perhaps something far more profound. All he knew, in his last conscious thought, was that the child had stopped crying, and somehow that made the pain worth it. Marcus woke to the smell of antiseptic and the soft beeping of medical equipment. His entire body felt like one massive bruise, and breathing sent sharp pains through his ribs. He tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pressed him back down. Easy there, hero. You've got 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and enough bruising to paint a sunset. Tessa Grant's voice was warm with concern and a touch of exasperation. The medical officer had been his friend since he arrived at Meridian 7. One of the few people on the outpost who actually cared about the workers. Her dark eyes studied him with professional concern as she checked his vital signs. "The child," Marcus croaked, his throat dry. "Where is she?" Tessa's expression shifted to something between awe and disbelief. "That's the interesting part. She's safe, sitting right outside this room, actually. But Marcus, you need to understand what's happened. The entire outpost is on lockdown." Before he could ask why, the door to the medical bay slid open. The figure that entered made Marcus's breath catch, despite his injuries. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, his form encased in armor that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. The same iridescent patterns that marked the child covered his visible skin. But these glowed with an intensity that spoke of power and authority. Sentinel, Borak, of the Kalahari Imperial Guard, had a presence that filled the room. His eyes, the same impossibly large eyes as the child's, fixed on Marcus with an intensity that was almost physical. Behind him, Tessa stepped back instinctively, her hand moving toward the emergency come. The sentinel spoke. And to Marcus's surprise, the words came in perfect standard language, though accented with harmonics that resonated in the chest. "Marcus Hale. I am Sentinel Vorak, commander of the warship Silvered Dawn. I have come to speak with the human who protected Princess Neva with his own blood." Princess? The word hit Marcus like another blow. He'd shielded royalty without knowing it. And judging by the Sentinel's stern expression, this could go very badly or very strangely. Before Marcus could respond, a small figure darted past the imposing warrior. Neva rushed to Marcus's bedside, her small hands reaching for his. The glowing patterns on her arms pulsed gently, and Marcus felt a warmth spread from where she touched him. The pain in his ribs eased slightly. She spoke rapidly in her native language, her voice urgent and grateful. Vorak translated, his stern expression softening slightly. "She says you are brave beyond measure, that you stood when others would have fled, that your heart beats with the rhythm of honor." Marcus looked down at the child, her eyes still holding traces of the fear he'd seen in the tunnels, but now mixed with something else. Trust. Hope. He managed a small smile despite the pain. "I couldn't let them hurt her. She's just a kid." Borak studied him for a long moment. Then something unexpected happened. The massive warrior placed his fist over his heart and bowed his head, a gesture of profound respect. "In 3 centuries of service, I have rarely seen such selfless valor. You did not know her station? You did not know her people. Yet you bled for her." Tessa cleared her throat nervously. "Sentinel, if I may ask, what happens now?" "The outpost administrators are demanding access to this bay, and there are 17 Kalahari soldiers in our docking port. People are scared." Borak's expression hardened again. "What happens now depends on answers." Princess Neva was traveling under diplomatic protection when her convoy was attacked. Her parents, the Emperor and Empress, were assassinated by unknown assailants. The child fled in terror and somehow ended up in your mining tunnels. We have been searching for 3 days. The weight of his words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about protecting a child anymore. This was about the murder of alien royalty, and Marcus had stumbled into the middle of an interstellar crisis. "The Overseer Dren," Marcus said slowly, pieces falling into place. "He wanted to lock her up. To use her. Did he know who she was?" Vorak's eyes flashed with anger. "We are investigating. But understand this, Marcus Hale. My people do not forget debts of blood. You have placed yourself between danger and our princess. By our oldest laws, this creates a bond, a responsibility. I don't want a reward, Marcus said quickly. I just wanted to help. This is not about reward, Vorak replied. This is about honor, about the fact that a human stranger showed more courage and compassion than those sworn to protect her. The Kelhari do not take such things lightly. Neva squeezed Marcus's hand gently, and when she spoke, her voice was small but clear. The words in accented but understandable standard language. You saved me when everything was dark. Now we save you back. Marcus didn't understand what she meant, but the determination in her young voice was unmistakable. Outside the medical bay, he could hear raised voices, demands for entry. The sound of his world becoming complicated in ways he'd spent 3 years trying to avoid. Tessa moved to the window, her face paling. Marcus, you need to see this. He managed to turn his head, following her gaze. Through the viewport, he could see the massive shape of the Kelhari warship docked at the outpost. But that wasn't what made his blood run cold. Surrounding it, weapons charged and ready, were 12 human military vessels. What had started as a simple act of kindness was about to become something far larger. And Marcus Hale, a man who just wanted a quiet life in the asteroid mines, was at the center of it all. The tension in the station's main conference room could have been cut with a knife. On one side stood Captain Victor Cross, commander of the Human Security Forces. His uniform crisp and his expression carved from stone. On the other side, Sentinel Vorak maintained his imposing presence, flanked by 2 Kelhari guards whose armor seemed to absorb the harsh overhead lighting. Marcus sat between them, still wearing his medical gown under a borrowed jacket, feeling absurdly out of place. Neva refused to leave his side, her small hand gripping his sleeve. And then there was a Serb. Ambassador Sira entered like a storm given form. She was tall for a Kelhari woman, her movements carrying a grace that seemed almost choreographed. The patterns on her skin were more intricate than Neva's, flowing in complex spirals down her arms and neck. Her eyes, when they fell on Marcus, held an intensity that made his breath catch for reasons having nothing to do with his injuries. She spoke, and her voice carried an authority that demanded attention. I am Ambassador Sira, sister to Princess Neva, and regent until a new emperor is crowned. I have come to collect my sister and to thank the human who preserved her life. Marcus tried to stand, but his ribs protested sharply. Sira moved forward with surprising speed, her hand steadying him with a touch that seemed to carry that same healing warmth he'd felt from Neva. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an electric moment of recognition that neither could explain. You should not be standing, Sira said softly, her accent turning the words into something almost musical. Not after what you endured for my sister. I've had worse, Marcus lied, attempting a smile. Sira's expression showed she knew it was a lie, but appreciation flickered in her eyes nonetheless. Captain Cross cleared his throat pointedly, breaking the moment. Ambassador, while we sympathize with your situation, we have protocols. This man is a civilian employee of this facility. The child was found in restricted areas. There are questions that need answering. Vorak's hand moved to his weapon, but Sira raised her hand, stopping him with a gesture. Captain Cross, let me clarify something. My sister is not the child. She is Princess Neva, third in line to the Kelhari throne. And this man is not merely a civilian employee. By our laws, he has become her guardian of blood. A bond created when one bleeds in defense of another with no expectation of reward. Marcus blinked. I'm her what now? Sira turned to him, and there was something in her gaze that made his heart beat faster. Among my people, such sacrifice creates a sacred connection. You did not know her. You gained nothing from protecting her. Yet you allowed yourself to be broken rather than let harm reach her. This is the highest form of honor we recognize. Neva spoke up then, her young voice clear in the tense room. Marcus is family now. That's what Sorel means. He chose us when no one else would. The simple truth in the child's words seemed to deflate some of the tension. Captain Cross's expression softened slightly, though his military bearing remained firm. Be that as it may, there are still procedures. Overseer Dren has filed a complaint about destruction of property and interference with security operations. Dren is currently in our custody, Vorak stated flatly. We have evidence linking him to the assassination plot. He was paid to hide the princess until the killers could arrive to finish their work. Your Marcus Hale disrupted that plan. The room fell silent. Marcus felt the weight of every eye upon him. I didn't know any of that. I just saw a scared kid. Exactly, Syrah said, moving closer to him. You saw a child in need, and you acted. No hesitation. No calculation. Just immediate, selfless courage. Do you understand how rare that is? How precious? Her proximity made it hard to think clearly. Marcus found himself noticing details. The way her patterns seemed to pulse in rhythm with her emotions. The subtle scent of something like cinnamon and starlight that clung to her. The way her eyes held depths he could spend a lifetime exploring. I did what anyone should do, he managed. But they didn't. Syrah countered gently. The guards didn't, the overseer didn't, the other workers who heard the alarms didn't. Only you. Only the one human who decided that a frightened alien child mattered more than his safety. Captain Cross sighed, his military facade cracking slightly. Ambassador, what exactly are you proposing? We can't just let you take one of our citizens without proper channels. Syrah's smile was slight but meaningful. I'm not proposing to take him anywhere he doesn't wish to go. But I am proposing something that might solve several problems at once. Princess Neva needs protection. The assassins are still at large. And Marcus Hale has demonstrated qualities that are exceedingly rare in any species. She looked directly at Marcus, and he felt his heart skip. I would like to formally request that Marcus accept a position as Neva's guardian, a liaison between our peoples. Someone she trusts, and someone who has proven he values life over politics. You want me to be her bodyguard? Marcus asked, incredulous. More than that, Syrah said softly. I want you to be the bridge between our worlds. To show both our peoples that compassion doesn't recognize species boundaries, and perhaps, she hesitated, a flash of vulnerability crossing her face. To help me understand the kind of strength that doesn't come from power, but from choosing to care. Neva tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Please say yes. I feel safe with you. And Syrah needs help too. She's trying to be brave like you, but she's sad inside. Syrah's composure cracked for just a moment, surprise and grief flashing across her features. Marcus saw the weight she carried, the loss of her parents, the burden of protecting her younger sister, the responsibility of an entire species on her shoulders. And he saw something else, a woman who had forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand beside her rather than behind her. Marcus looked at Captain Cross. Am I free to make this choice? The captain studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're not under arrest, Hale. If you want to walk into an interstellar incident, that's your prerogative. Though I'd suggest you think carefully. Marcus turned back to Syrah, finding her watching him with an expression he couldn't quite name. Hope, perhaps? Or maybe something deeper. If I say yes, does that mean I'm leaving the outpost? It means, Syrah said carefully, that you would travel with us. Help us find the assassins. Protect Neva. And perhaps... She paused, something vulnerable in her eyes. Show me what courage looks like when it comes from the heart, rather than duty. In that moment, Marcus Hale made the second decision that would change his life forever. The first had been standing between a child and danger. The second was standing beside a woman who needed to remember that. Strength could also mean allowing someone else to share the burden. All right, he said. I'll do it. Neva's face lit up with joy. Vorak placed his fist over his heart in that gesture of respect. And Syrah's smile, small and genuine, made every bruise on Marcus's body feel suddenly inconsequential. Outside, the human and Kalahari fleets maintained their standoff. But inside that conference room, something far more important had just begun. A bond forged not in politics or protocol, but in the simple, profound act of one being choosing to protect another. And somewhere in the shadows of the station, those who had hunted a princess watched and waited. Their plans disrupted but not abandoned. The real test was still to come. 3 days after Marcus agreed to become Neva's guardian, the Silvered Dawn remained docked at Meridian 7 while investigators worked to unravel the conspiracy. Marcus found himself in a strange new world, learning Kalahari customs and protocols while his ribs slowly healed. But it was the hours spent with Sierra that truly changed him. They met each evening in the observation deck, ostensibly to discuss Neva's protection detail. But their conversations wandered far beyond security protocols. Sierra spoke of her homeworld, of crystal cities that sang in the wind, philosophies that valued emotional bonds as deeply as logical thought. Marcus shared stories of Earth, of the messy, complicated beauty of humanity, of his reasons for choosing a quiet life in the mines. Tonight, observation deck was empty except for them. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, and the soft lighting cast gentle shadows across Sierra's features. She stood close enough that Marcus could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, that subtle heat that all Kalahari seemed to possess. "Your people confuse me," Sierra admitted softly. "You are capable of such cruelty, yet also such tenderness. How do you reconcile these contradictions?" Marcus considered the question. "We don't really. We just try to choose the better path when we can. Doesn't always work out." Sierra turned to face him fully, her patterns glowing faintly in the dim light. "You chose the better path, without hesitation. Why?" "Maybe I was tired of choosing the safe path," Marcus said honestly. "I came out here to hide from complications, from caring too much, but when I saw Neva, none of that mattered. She needed help, and I could give it. Simple as that. Nothing about you is simple, Marcus Hale." The way she said his name, with that musical accent, made something warm bloom in his chest. They were standing very close now, close enough that he could see the delicate patterns around her eyes, the way they pulsed slightly faster when she looked at him. "Sierra, he began, but the words were cut off by blaring alarms. The lights in the observation deck shifted to emergency red. Vorak's voice crackled over the comm system, urgent and commanding. "Breach in Sector 7. Multiple hostiles. They're heading for the princess." Marcus and Sierra ran. His ribs screamed in protest, but adrenaline pushed him forward. They reached Neva's quarters to find Vorak and 4 guards already engaged in combat. The attackers were dressed in nondescript black armor, their weapons firing energy bolts that scorched the walls. One of the assassins broke through the defensive line, racing toward Neva's door. Marcus didn't think. He threw himself forward, catching the attacker around the waist and sending them both crashing through a side corridor. They rolled together, and Marcus felt a blade slice across his shoulder, hot and sharp. He grappled with the assassin, his mining-trained strength pitting against professional killer's skill. The assassin was faster, more trained, but Marcus was desperate. He thought of Neva's frightened eyes in the tunnel. He thought of Sierra's smile. He fought dirty, using elbows and knees and sheer stubbornness. Sierra appeared like an avenging force. Her movements were fluid and precise, a fighting style Marcus had never seen. She struck pressure points with surgical accuracy, and the assassin crumpled. But there were more coming. The corridor became a battlefield. Marcus found himself back to back with Sierra, defending the approach to Neva's quarters. Energy bolts seared past them. Sierra moved with incredible speed, but Marcus could see her tiring. There were too many attackers. "Get Neva to the ship," Marcus shouted over the chaos. "I'll hold them here," No, Sierra said firmly, her voice cutting through the noise. "We hold together, or we fall together." Something in her words, in the absolute certainty with which she said them, made Marcus's heart pound for reasons beyond the fight. They moved in sync, his human unpredictability complementing her trained precision. When he stumbled, her hand steadied him. When she was flanked, his body blocked the attack. Vorak fought his way to them. His armor scorched, but his determination unshaken. "The princess is secure in the ship. We need to fall back." They retreated in fighting order, covering each other step by step. Marcus took another hit, this one to his leg, and he felt his knee buckle. Sierra caught him, her arm around his waist, half carrying him while still defending against attackers. Her strength surprised him. that alien physiology capable of feats human muscles couldn't match. They made it to the docking port, where Kelhari soldiers had established a defensive perimeter. The attackers fell back, disappearing into the station's depths like shadows. The battle was over as quickly as it had begun, leaving behind scorched walls, stunned security personnel, and too many questions. In the ship's medical bay, Sierra personally tended Marcus's wounds. Her hands were gentle but efficient, applying Kelhari healing compounds that eased the pain almost immediately. They sat in silence for a moment, the adrenaline fading, leaving behind exhaustion and something else, something neither wanted to name yet. "You were supposed to let me handle the fighting," Sierra said softly, but there was no anger in her voice, only concern. "You were supposed to let me sacrifice myself heroically," Marcus countered. With a weak smile, Sierra's hand stilled on his shoulder. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and the vulnerability in her gaze stole his breath. "I can't lose you too. I've lost so much already. My parents, my home's peace. I can't." Her voice cracked slightly. Marcus reached up, his hand covering hers where it rested on his shoulder. "You won't lose me. I'm stubborn, remember? Too stupid to know when to quit." A sound escaped Sierra that might have been a laugh or a sob. She leaned forward, her forehead coming to rest against his uninjured shoulder, and Marcus felt her trembling. The strong ambassador, the powerful regent, reduced to someone who just needed to be held. He wrapped his arms around her carefully, mindful of both their injuries. She fit against him perfectly, her warmth seeping into his bones. They stayed like that for long minutes, finding comfort in each other's presence. Two souls who had been alone too long, finally finding rest. When Sierra finally pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but also something else. Determination. Hope. Perhaps even the beginning of something that looked like love. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Promise me that whatever comes next, we face it together. No more heroic sacrifices. No more standing alone." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "Together, I promise." Outside the medical bay, Neva stood with Vorak, peering through the window. The child smiled, understanding things adults often missed. "Sierra is smiling again," she whispered to the sentinel. "Marcus is fixing her heart like he fixed mine." Vorak nodded solemnly. "The guardian of blood protects more than just the body, little princess. He protects the spirit as well. Your sister chose wisely when she asked him to stay." But their moment of peace was short-lived. The ship's scanner operator burst into the bay, his expression grave. "Ambassador, we've identified the attackers. They're from the Shadow Assembly, the faction that opposed your parents' peace initiatives. And according to our intelligence," he hesitated, looking uncomfortable. Sierra commanded, her ambassador's voice returning. "They have at least 12 more cells positioned throughout the sector. This attack was just the beginning. They're planning something larger, something that targets both Kelhari and human installations. They want to start a war." Marcus felt Sierra's hand tighten in his. The danger wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. But this time, they wouldn't face it alone. This time, they had each other, and somehow that made all the difference. The silver dawn cut through space at near light speed, chasing intelligence reports that led them to a remote asteroid field. Marcus stood in the command center, still getting used to the alien technology that surrounded him. Sierra worked beside him, coordinating with both Kelhari and human forces. In the 3 weeks since the attack, they had become an effective team. They had also become something more. It happened gradually, then all at once. Stolen moments between crisis meetings, her hand finding his during strategy sessions. The way she leaned against him when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Late nights in the observation deck where conversations about tactics turned into confessions about dreams and fears and the terrifying vulnerability of caring for someone across the vastness of space. They hadn't spoken the words yet. The galaxy was burning, conspiracies were unraveling, and neither had the luxury of time. But Marcus saw it in the way Sierra looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. He felt it in the gentle touch of her hand on his face when she thought he was sleeping. Love didn't ask permission. It simply arrived. Vorak interrupted his thoughts. We've located the main Shadow Assembly base. It's heavily fortified. They have at least 200 fighters and significant defensive systems. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to launch coordinated strikes against both Kalahari and human core worlds within 48 hours. Captain Cross's voice crackled over the cum. My fleet is in position. But Ambassador, I need to be clear. If we engage, this becomes an official military action. The political ramifications will be significant. Sierra straightened, every inch the regent. Captain, those ramifications will be far worse if we allow them to ignite a war between our peoples. My parents died trying to build peace. I will not let their assassins destroy that dream. Marcus watched her, awed by her strength. But he also saw the tightness around her eyes, the way her patterns pulsed with stress. She carried too much, bore too many burdens alone. Before he could stop himself, he stepped forward and took her hand in front of the entire command crew. Sierra looked at him, surprise flickering across her face. In Kalahari culture, such public displays of affection carried significant weight. Marcus didn't care. She needed to know she wasn't alone. We're with you, he said simply. All of us. You don't have to carry this by yourself. For a moment, Sierra's careful control wavered. Her fingers tightened around his, and he saw a raw gratitude in her eyes. Then she nodded, straightened her shoulders, and became the commander they needed. But she didn't let go of his hand.
Oh.
All ships, she commanded. Prepare to engage. We end this today. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Marcus found himself manning a defensive station, his crash course in Kalahari technology, serving him well. Energy bolts streaked through space. Ships exploded in silent blooms of light. The Shadow Assembly fought with desperate determination, knowing this was their last stand. Then the alarms shrieked. A suicide ship had broken through their lines, heading directly for the Silver Dawn's command center. It was packed with explosives, enough to destroy half the fleet. Point defense systems fired, but the ship's armor absorbed the hits. It was going to impact. They had seconds. Marcus saw Sierra's face. Saw her calculating the impossible odds, saw her preparing to order an evacuation she knew wouldn't complete in time. And he made his choice. He ran. Down corridors, through airlocks, into the hangar bay, where emergency craft were docked. He launched in a mining shuttle, the same type he'd operated for years. The controls were familiar, comforting. He pushed the engines to their limits, intercepting the suicide ship mere kilometers from impact. Sierra's voice screamed over the cum. Marcus, no. Pull back. Together, remember? He said, keeping his voice steady, even though his hands shook. That means I don't let you die. Ever. He rammed the suicide ship, detonating it early. The explosion engulfed both craft in a sphere of white-hot destruction. The last thing Marcus saw was Sierra's face on his view screen, her patterns blazing with light, her voice calling his name. Then nothing. Marcus woke to pressure on his chest and the sound of sobbing. He opened his eyes to find Sierra bent over him, her hands glowing as they pressed against his burned and broken body. Her tears fell on his face, and where they touched, his skin began to heal. Around them, Kalahari medics worked frantically, but it was Sierra's touch that held him to life. Don't you dare, she whispered fiercely, her voice breaking. Don't you dare leave me. I just found you. I just learned what it means to not be alone. You promised we'd face everything together. Marcus tried to speak, but his lungs wouldn't cooperate. He managed to lift his hand, touching her face gently. Sierra's patterns flared brilliantly, and he felt a surge of warmth flow from her into him. It was a bonding technique, he learned later. Something Kalahari only did with life mates. A sharing of life force that would connect them permanently. Sierra didn't hesitate. She poured her strength into him, her very essence intertwining with his. And slowly, impossibly, Marcus's breathing steadied. His wounds began to close. The medics gasped in amazement, witnessing something that hadn't been performed in generations. When he could finally speak, Marcus's voice was hoarse but clear. Together means you don't get to die for me either. So we're both going to live, deal? Sierra laughed through her tears, a a sound of pure joy and relief. Deal, you impossible, stubborn, beautiful human. She kissed him then, in front of everyone, protocol and propriety forgotten. It was a kiss that tasted of tears and hope and the promise of tomorrow. When they finally parted, the entire medical bay erupted in cheers, Kalahari and human voices joining together.